All right, so in this video, we are going to make some improvements to our bank class. So we're gonna do an upgrade here. So currently our bank only contains two accounts, and it's just an account for John and an account for Marsha. We have no way of actually adding more accounts to our bank. But now it's time for an upgrade. What we're gonna do here is instead of having just two fields for two bank accounts, we are going to create instead an array of bank accounts. And then in that array, we can store more accounts. So what we're going to do here is we are going to make changes to the bank class. So we are going to remove these. Let's go ahead and remove all the references to John and Marsha. We'll be editing the deposit method as well later. And then we will be changing the contents of this method as well. So for now, let's go ahead and leave them here as empty methods, methods without any implementation. So there's nothing inside it. So this is fine. This is not going to cause any errors because the methods are not returning anything anyway. So you can just leave them blank for now. And here in the bank tester, so we go ahead and remove these because we don't have the anything in the deposit method. We don't have the John and the Marsha accounts as well. And then we have nothing to print for print balances. The bank account class remains the same. We are going to have a deposit method for each bank account, a withdraw method for each bank account, a get balance and a get account name for each bank account. And then we are going to leave these constructors, but this is what we will be using to instantiate our bank accounts. The one that accepts a string and then a double. All right. So our approach here is going to be something like this. We are going to be creating a bank object. And then instead of having two bank accounts in that object, okay, so this is our bank. So a while ago, we had two bank accounts here, one for John and one for Marsha. So we had two bank account fields. What we're going to do here now is we are instead going to have an array inside of this bank object. So this is an array, so we can call this accounts. It's going to be an array of bank account objects. So inside the array, we can store the first bank account here, the second bank account here, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and so on. All right, so that's going to be our approach now. Okay, so here in the bank class, let's go ahead and make, let's make a field. So this one's going to be an integer for the maximum number of accounts we're going to be storing. Because when you make an array, as we learned earlier, you have to specify a length for the array, and it's going to be a fixed size. Now let's go ahead and create an account. So this is going to be an array of bank account objects. Now remember, when you create an array, you have to specify the data type, right? So because this is an array that's going to store bank account objects, then we say bank account and then square brackets. So this signifies that this is going to be an array of bank accounts. So let's go ahead and give it a name. So this field name is going to be accounts, right? So at this point, we have not yet created the array. This simply creates a field that could potentially store an array of bank account objects. And then inside the bank constructor, let's go ahead and instantiate it. So for max, let's give it a value of 10. And then let's go ahead and create the bank account. So we say accounts is equal to new, and then bank account square brackets, and then here we say max. So this creates a new array for bank accounts that has a length of 10. By the way, in the slide set, you'll see that we declared max slightly differently. So it says in the slide set, it says private static final int max. So I decided to just make it a regular field here instead of a static field because there's a bit more that needs to be explained with static and final, but we will get to that in future lessons. For now, let's go ahead and just say max is an integer and max has a value of 10 when we make our bank account. And then we create a new array of bank account objects that has a length of 10, which is the value of max. All right. So now we have an array that can store bank accounts. So this array, when it gets created, it's going to have 10 slots. So index 0 all the way to index 9. But at this point, there's nothing that's going to be inside those slots in the array. It could store bank accounts, but for now, it actually just stores a value of null because we need to actually create the bank account first and then store it in a specific slot in the array. All right. So let's go in and create another field. So let's create another field that's going to be an integer as well. And then I will name this num accounts. And then we will initialize this to 0. We are going to use this to keep track of how many accounts we have. So when the bank opens, when we instantiate the bank for the first time, then we won't have any accounts. So num accounts is going to be 0. The maximum is 10, but when you open the bank, there's going to be 0 bank accounts for now. All right. And then let's go ahead and create a new method here. Let's create a method that's going to allow us to open accounts. Okay. So it's going to be a void method. It's not going to return anything. So what this method is going to do is it's going to open an account, create a new bank account, and then store that in the accounts array. So we need 2 pieces of information here. We need to specify a name, right? When we create a bank account. And then also we need to specify the initial balance, the amount. Okay, so let's call it init_bal for initial balance, right? So what do we do here? Okay, so we want to go ahead and create a new bank account. So we've got the accounts array, right? So if we say accounts square bracket 0 is equal to new bank account, let's say Alice and then 1000. Okay, so this creates a new bank account, right? So going back to the bank account class, we've got this constructor, right? So there's this constructor right here, which accepts a string and a double, which is going to be for the name of the for the value of account name and for the value of balance. So what we're doing here is we are creating a new bank account that's going to have an account name of Alice and a balance of 1000, and then we are storing that account inside accounts index 0. So instead of giving it a variable name like Alice, for example, Alice is equal to new bank account Alice 1000. We're saying account square brackets 0 is equal to new bank account Alice 1000. So to access this, we can use account square brackets 0. But we don't want to hard code it. Okay, we want to say accounts num accounts. So the first time, this is going to have a value of 0. So the first time we call this, this is going to be account square brackets 0. So whatever bank account we create is going to get stored in index 0. So instead of hard coding Alice and 1000 here, instead of hard coding the account name and the balance, we want to use the values that were passed to the parameters. So when we call this method, we pass a name and an init_bal. Let's change that. Init_bal. Okay. And then that value gets passed to the bank account constructor's first parameter. And then the init_bal parameter, the value of init_bal, gets passed as the second argument to the bank account constructor. And then after that, we want to increment the value of num accounts so that the next time we call open account, it's going to say accounts, num accounts still, but now num accounts has a value of 1. So the next bank account that gets created is going to get stored in index 1 of the accounts array. All right. Now we need to make some changes here though, because we need to put this in an if statement so that we actually don't create more than 10 accounts, right? Because our accounts array only has a maximum number of 10 accounts that it can store. So let's go ahead and put in a print statement here. If the value of num accounts is less than max, then we can go ahead and proceed with creating an account, right? So we create the account and then we increment the value of num accounts so that the next account we create will be in the next index value, right? So as long as num account is less than the maximum, which should be lowercase in this case because I typed it in as lowercase, all right? So if we exceed the number of the maximum number of accounts, or if we reach that maximum number, then let's just go ahead and print out a message. System.out.println. And then let's just go ahead and say maximum number of accounts reached. All right. So now this allows us to open accounts. So let's go ahead and save this. And then here in the bank tester, we instantiate a bank object. And then let's go ahead and create a bank account as well. So let's say b.open account. So Alice, comma, 1000. Let's open another one. So this one is going to be for Bob, and the balance is going to be 2000. So we instantiate a bank object. So we create one, right? So max is going to be 10. Num accounts is going to be 0. And then we are going to instantiate an array of bank account objects that has 10 slots, and then it's going to be assigned to a field named accounts. And then we say b.openAccount, which is going to call this method. So this method needs, let me just move this a bit so we have more space. So this method is expecting a string and a double. So Alice goes to name, 1000 goes to initBal. And then it checks if num accounts is less than max. Yes, it is, because num accounts is 0 and max is 10. So we go inside here. Accounts square brackets 0 is equal to new bank account, Alice, 1000. So the new bank account gets created and then it gets assigned to index 0 of the accounts array. And then we increment the value of num accounts. So num accounts is now 1. So the next time we call open account, it's going to say accounts square brackets 1 is equal to new bank account, Bob, and 2000. And then num accounts plus plus moves num accounts up to 2. All right. So we can keep adding accounts, and then eventually, if we add 10 accounts, when we call open account again, so num account is going to be, so after the 10th account that we create, num account is going to be 10. So 10 is not less than 10. So we don't execute this. Instead, we go inside the else clause, and this gets printed out. All right. So let's save this. So let's go ahead and actually bring this down to 2, just so we can test this out. So let's create another one. So this one's going to be for Kathy. And then let's give Kathy 2000 as well. So these two accounts should be able to be created, right? We should be able to create these. So this is going to be in accounts 0, and this is going to be in accounts 1. And then this should be in accounts 3, but max is only 2. So, no, so this should be in, so this is in num accounts, this is in accounts 0, this is in accounts 1, and this should be in accounts 2, okay? However, the maximum is only 2. So when we try to create this, the value of num account should be 2 for index 2, which is supposed to be the third item or the third element, and then max is 2. So 2 is no longer less than 2. So at this point, we should instead get this message that says maximum number of accounts reached. So let's save this. And then let's go ahead and test it out. Java C *Java. And then Java bank tester. Right. So you see maximum number of accounts reached. So that gets printed out because the third time we try to open an account, this gets printed out. Now, these other two, they got printed out. We just don't get any feedback. So I guess we can just go ahead and put a print statement in here. System.out.println. So we say account for plus name has been created, or opened, has been opened. Okay. So when we print this out, or when we open an account for Alice, it's going to print out account for Alice has been opened. So let me just move this. And then when I say open account Bob, it's going to print out account for Bob has been opened. And then when we try to open an account for Kathy, it is instead going to say maximum number of accounts reached. So let's save this. And then let's compile it. And let's go ahead and run it again. Right? So account for Alice has been opened, account for Bob has been opened, and then maximum number of accounts reached. All right. So next. So next, let's go ahead and create a method that allows us to deposit. Okay. So we have the deposit method here. So the deposit method of the bank class needs 2 pieces of information. We need to specify the name of the account, and we need to specify how much we want to deposit inside that account. All right, so what do we do here? Okay, so what we want to do here is we want to iterate through all of the accounts inside the accounts array, right? So let's bring this back up to 10. Okay. So every time we make a deposit, we want to iterate through all of the items in the accounts array and then check if the name that we provided here matches the name of the account. So we could say, for example, b.deposit Alice 500. So we actually want to go ahead and deposit into Alice's account. So we want to search through all of the accounts in the array and then find the one that has an account name of Alice. So we're going to need a loop here. We're going to need a for loop. We can use a for loop to iterate through all of the elements in the array. So let's go ahead and say for int x is equal to 0. Okay. So it doesn't actually have to be I. You can change the name of the variable here. And then we want to keep iterating as long as x is less than the number of accounts that we currently have. We don't want to use max because we could have a maximum of 10 accounts, but we only have 3. So accounts 0, accounts 1, and then accounts 2 is going to have a bank account in those slots, but for the rest of the slots, it's just going to have null in there. So we don't want to iterate through all of those other accounts as well, or the non-accounts, right? Because they're null. So we only want to iterate as many times as the number of accounts that we actually have. And then we say x plus plus. Okay, so this is going to iterate through the loop. Our intention here is for the loop to iterate through the accounts array. So what do we want to do here? In each iteration, we want to check if, okay, accounts square brackets x, okay? So in the first iteration, accounts square brackets x is going to be accounts square brackets 0. So it's going to go ahead and look at the first bank account in the accounts array. So we want to access that bank account. So this is going to be, this is going to refer to that. So in the first iteration, accounts square brackets x is going to refer to the Alice bank account. So the new bank account that was created the first time, right? And then in the second iteration, it's going to refer to the second bank account, the one that has a name of Bob. Okay, so we want to reference each bank account, and then every time we do, let's go ahead and get the account name, right? So if you remember here in the bank account class, we have a get account name method, which returns the account name of that specific bank account. So the first time this runs, account square brackets 0 refers to this account, the new bank account that has an account name of Alice. So this is going to return Alice. Account square brackets 0 dot get account name is going to return the string Alice. So we want to check if this is equal to the value of name. So whatever value we pass here, okay, so if we say b.deposit Kathy, so name is equal to Kathy, so we want to iterate through the accounts array until we find an account name that is actually equal to Kathy. So if we do in fact find one, then we go ahead and deposit into that array. Okay, but so okay, so I could do this. I could say accounts square brackets x, right? And then I could say deposit, and then I could just go ahead and pass the amount. So when we find that bank account, we go ahead and deposit into it. But I'm gonna make I'm gonna add some additional lines here. At the start of this, I'm going to create a temporary variable. I'm going to name it temp. So this is going to store a bank account, or potentially a bank account. When we begin the search, we want this to be null. So temp doesn't have anything inside it. It doesn't refer to anything. So we start with that, and then we go inside the for loop. And then if we find a matching bank account, we go ahead and assign that to the temp variable. So we say temp is equal to accounts square brackets x. So when we find, if and when we find a matching bank account, we go ahead and assign that bank account to the temp variable. Okay. And then at the end of the for loop, okay, if the value of temp is not equal to null, then we go ahead and say temp.deposit AMT. So why am I checking if temp is not equal to null? Because it could be possible that we've gone through all of the items in the accounts array, but we never found a matching account, right? So right now we've got Alice, Bob, and Kathy. What if we try to deposit to an account named David, right? So this means that we are going to iterate through all of the bank accounts in the accounts array, but we're never going to find a matching bank account. We're never going to find a bank account whose account name matches the name that we specified when we called the deposit method. Therefore, temp is still going to be null, right? So if it's not null, meaning we actually found a bank account, then we go ahead and deposit, okay? But if it's still null, then we actually don't end up doing anything, right? So that's very important, because if it is in fact still null, then you cannot deposit on a null object. So if we didn't have this checker, so if, for example, I erase this, so what we're doing here is at the end of the for loop, we go ahead and say temp.deposit. But again, it's possible that we finish the for loop, but we didn't find a matching account. So temp is still null. So essentially what you're saying here in that case, if we don't find a matching bank account, is null.deposit AMT. You can't deposit on null because null is not a bank account. Null is not even any type of object. Okay. All right. So that's why this is important. Okay. So let's save this. And let's go ahead and put a print statement here. Let's say system.out.println accounts of, and then let's say accounts, oh, you can just say name. Account of plus name has been found. So this just gives us feedback and says that the account has been found. And then here, we can just say money has been deposited to name account, right? So we're just putting some feedback here. If we do in fact find a matching account, it's going to say account of the name has been found. And then we go ahead and deposit to that amount. And then again, we get some feedback here. Money has been deposited to name account. Oh, let's put an apostrophe here. Backslash apostrophe. So money has been deposited to, let's say, Kathy's account, for example, S. Okay. So it's going to say money has been deposited to Kathy's account, or money has been deposited to Alice's account, and so on. All right. So you can pause the video at this point and then just double check your code. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and say b.deposit. So let's deposit to Kathy's account. So let's give Kathy an additional 500. So let's save these. Oh, all right. So all the needed files have been saved. Then let's go ahead and test it out. So let's recompile. And then let's run it, Java bank tester. So we get to open those 3 accounts, and then account of Kathy has been found, and money has been deposited to Kathy's account. All right. So if we change this, let's say David So let's save it. And then let's recompile. And then let's run it. So this is only going to give us the feedback messages for opening the account. And then as you can see, it doesn't say account of David has been found. Money has been deposited to David's account. That is because there is no such account. So the program actually went through all of the items in the accounts array, and then it checked if the account name matched David, but it actually never found one. So at this point, temp is still null. So temp not equals null is false, and therefore we do not deposit to it, and we don't print this out. So in this case, nothing happens. So the money is not accepted, okay, because there is no account for David. All right. So, okay, so let's clear this for later, and then let's go back to the bank class. So next, let's go ahead and create the let's create the withdraw method, which is going to be similar to this one. So if you want, you can pause the video and then create the withdraw method yourself, and then play it again and then see if it matches what I have, what I will be making. But if it doesn't match, it doesn't mean that it doesn't work. You could have actually, if it doesn't match what I make, it doesn't mean that what you made is wrong. It could possibly still give us the same outcome, but you just wrote it differently, okay? So public void withdraw. So this one is going to accept a name as well as an amount. And then we actually just copy this whole thing, because this method should do the exact same thing, except this part here. We need to call the withdraw method of the bank account object instead, right? But it's exactly the same, right? So we want to withdraw, right? So we call the withdraw method on the bank class. So we specify the name of the account and the amount that we would like to withdraw. And then here, we go ahead and loop through all of the accounts in the array. And then if we find a matching account, we go ahead and assign that to temp, and then we print out account of whoever that person is has been found. And then we go ahead and say temp.withdraw amount, okay? If we actually find an account. So if temp is not equal to null, and then we print this out, okay? So exactly the same, right? So let's go ahead and print out the balances as well. So let's go ahead and make a for loop for this one. For int I is equal to 0, as long as the value of I is less than the value of num accounts, right? So we don't want to loop through the entire array. We only want to loop as many times as the number of accounts that we have. I plus plus. So in this case, we just go ahead and say num accounts, square brackets I, dot get balance. So we want to print this out. Let's get a couple of things, and then let's store them in variables here. So this is a double, right? So double bal, and then string name. So for this one, let's get the this should be accounts, not num accounts, because the name of the array is accounts, not num accounts. So we need to change this. And then this one's going to be get account name, right? So we get the name of the account, and then we store it in this variable here. And then let's just go ahead and print something here. So let's say system.out.print println. Okay. So let's say, you know what, let's use a printf statement in here. So let's use a format string instead. So here we'll say the account of %s has %f. So %s is going to be the placeholder for the name of the account. And then %f is going to be the placeholder for the balance. So %s for string and then %f so we can format it as a floating point number. And then we put a comma in here and then we pass name. So whatever the value here is, and then bal. Whatever the value here is. So the value of name gets replaced here in %s, and then bal goes inside %f. And then let's not forget to put a \n for a new line. Printf is not going to do that for you. You have to actually put a \n in there if you want a new line. All right. So the print balances method here is just going to loop through all of the accounts in the accounts array. So for int I is equal to 0, as long as I is less than the number of accounts that we have, let's go ahead and increment the I here after each iteration. So first iteration, accounts square bracket 0, get account name. So this is going to be Alice. Account square bracket 0 dot get balance. This is going to be 1000. It's going to get stored in bal, and then it's going to print out the account of Alice has 1000. So it's just going to loop through all of the accounts and do that. All right. So let's go back here. And then let's say b dot withdraw. And then let's say Bob. So let's withdraw 500 from Bob's account. And then b dot deposit Kathy. And then let's give Kathy another 1000. Right? And then let's go ahead and say b dot print balances. So our expected output here should be, for the print balances, it should say the account of Alice has 1000. The account of Bob has 1500 because we made the deposit. And then finally, the account of Kathy has 3000 because in this case, we made a deposit. So a withdrawal from Bob's account and a deposit into Kathy's account. All right, so let's save this. Okay. So you can pause the video at this point to double check your code. You can pause the video at this point as well to double check your code. And then now let's go ahead and compile. And run. All right, so the account of Alice has 1000, the account of Bob has 1500, the account of Kathy has 3000. I guess we can go ahead and format this %.2f. So we bring it back down to 2 decimal places. So let's recompile and then let's run. All right, 2 decimal places. Okay, so let's clear this for later. And then I want to go ahead and make some changes here because this part is redundant. This one and this one, they're the same, right? So what we can do here is we can turn this into a method instead. So I'm going to make a method here. So this time I'm going to make this a private method because I don't intend to use this outside of the bank class. So I'm going to make this a helper method inside the bank class instead. So it's going to be a private method. And then really my intention here is to just clean up the code a little bit just to reduce the redundancy. So this part right here, really what it's doing is it's finding an account, right? So we withdraw from an account. To withdraw from an account, we have to find the account first and then go ahead and make the withdrawal. Same thing for deposit. But the code is exactly the same. So let's go ahead and reduce the redundancy for this one. So this one is going to be a private method that's going to return a bank account. And then let's name this one find account. So this one needs one argument. So we'll store this in a parameter called name. So when we call find account, we need to provide a name, and then we go ahead and actually find the bank account with a matching name. So we go ahead and get this, the for loop, right? So the for loop goes through all of the accounts, right? So it iterates through all of the accounts, the number of accounts that we have. So accounts square brackets x dot get account name dot equals name. So if we actually find the account, okay, we go ahead and say account of whoever that is has been found, and then we go ahead and return that bank account. So I guess we can go ahead and just say here, return accounts square brackets x. So we loop through all of the accounts, and then if we find a matching account name, we return that account. So let's say we find it in accounts square brackets 2. So let's say we actually try to look for the Kathy bank account. So we say b.findAccount Kathy. So it's going to loop through the accounts. So first one, it's not going to find it because the first one is Alice. The second one is Bob. And then the third one with an index of 2. So is going to be Kathy. So this is going to say return account square brackets 2, which is going to be the bank account pertaining to the bank account of Kathy. So this is going to return a reference to the object itself. It's not going to return the account name, right? So accounts stores a collection of bank account objects. So when you say account square brackets 0, it returns to you a bank account. So when you return account square brackets x, it's going to return a bank account object, not a string, okay? Not a string that's Kathy, that says Kathy, not a string that says Bob or Alice. It's going to return the actual bank account. And then the bank account has an account name, which we can access using get account name. We can deposit through that bank account by saying deposit, dot deposit, or dot withdraw, okay? So this is why this works, okay? Account square brackets x dot get account name, because this is a reference to a bank account object, okay? So that bank account object dot get account name. So this one returns a string, okay? So that's why you can then say dot equals and compare it with another string. So here, this is called chaining methods. So you can actually do that. So this returns a bank account object. So you can call get account name. This then returns a string. So you can call the equals method on a string and then compare it with another string. All right. So I just want to make that clear that this returns a bank account object and not a string. Okay. So the account name is different from the actual bank account. All right. So, so again, just to illustrate, so account square brackets x is going to return a bank account object. So this is a bank account object. And then that bank account object happens to have an account name and also a balance. And then it's also going to have the methods get account name, get balance, deposit, and withdraw. So I'm not going to write it in there anymore because there's no space. All right, so let's delete that. Okay. So when we call this method, it's going to return a bank account if it actually finds a bank account. But what if we've gone through all of the accounts in the list, or in the array rather, and we still did not find a bank account? So we're going to have to return null. Okay? Because this is going to expect something to be returned, either a bank account, or if nothing gets found, null. Okay? So if we find a bank account, Kathy, for instance, so it's going to return the bank account pertaining to Kathy's bank account. If we go through all of the elements in the accounts array and we don't find the bank account at the end of it, we are instead going to return null. Okay, so that's what this method is going to do. And it's a private method because we don't intend to call it outside of this class. Now, how do we use it? Okay, so let's remove this, because the purpose of moving it here is for me to be able to remove it, for us to be able to remove it and reduce the redundancy. Okay, so what we can do here is we can actually call the function here. So bank account temp is equal to find account, and then we pass to it the value of name, right? So why does it make sense? Why can we be able to call this and then assign it to the temp variable, which is supposed to store a bank account? Because the method itself will return to us a bank account if a bank account is found. If not, then the method is going to return null. So this could either be at the end of the method, this could either be an actual bank account or it could be null. And then in this if statement, if temp is not equal to null, meaning if we actually found a bank account, then we go ahead and continue with the withdrawal. All right, so let's save that. And then we do the same thing for this one. So we erase this. And then we call find account in here as well. So code is much cleaner. We've reduced the redundancy. So this is called, we can call this a helper method because it helps out within the class. And then we can just make it private because we won't plan on using it outside anyway. But you can still make it public. I mean, you could actually still make it public. So this gives us the option to actually use it also outside. Okay. But I just wanted to give you an example of when you might make a method public. Okay. So this could be one of them. This fits in the general idea of it. All right. So let's go ahead and so the result here is going to be the same because we didn't actually change anything. We simply transferred the code or a part of the code and reduce the redundancy. So if we test this out, we are still going to get the same result, unless I actually made a mistake somewhere, like a typo or something. All right, so looks good. So bank tester. All right, so we still get the same result. So let me just go ahead and scroll back down here. And then you can go ahead and pause the video and double check the code if you find that you have an error somewhere. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and erase this. And let's just go through some code tracing over here, just again to just verify our understanding of how these methods work. So we're calling the withdraw method of the bank class. So we've got a bank object here named B. So when we say b.withdraw Bob 500, this is what we are calling the withdraw method in the bank class. So Bob goes to name, and then 500 goes to AMT. And then inside the withdraw method, the first line, we call find account, and then we pass to it the value of name. So this is saying find account Bob. So we go inside here. So now find account gets called and name has a value of Bob. And then we go inside the for, then we go ahead and execute the for loop. We go inside the method and run the for loop. So for int x is equal to 0, as long as x is less than num accounts, and then x plus plus. So we go through every single element in accounts. So first iteration, x is 0. If account square bracket 0 is going to give us the first account, the first bank account in the accounts array. And then we're going to get the account name of that account. So this is going to return to us Alice, right? And then we say Alice dot equals Bob. So that is not true. So that is false. So we ignore this. And then we go back up to the for loop. And then x plus plus. So x is now 1. So we go inside here. If accounts square brackets 1 gives us the bank account in the second slot of the array. Okay, index 1 is the second slot. And then we say get account name. So that's going to give us Bob. So Bob, the string Bob, is now equal to name, because name is equal to Bob, right? So Bob dot equals Bob gives us true. So we go inside the if statement, and then this gets printed out. Account of Bob has been found. And then we return the bank account in question. So when we have a return statement, it exits the method completely. So we don't actually go ahead and continue the loop anymore. So we're not going to loop in here and check Kathy, because we found the relevant bank account already. Now, of course, this is a very simple example. So we assume that no person has, there's no duplicate accounts with the same names, all right? So we return the bank account. So where does it get returned to? So it gets returned back to here. So this is now the bank account object in question. So we are now assigning that to temp. So this is now, this one here, the bank account that was opened when we actually called this. So Bob's bank account. Okay. So temp is now that. So we go ahead and execute this one. If temp is not equal to null, so it's not equal to null now because temp is now equal to the bank account that refers to the Bob bank account. So we go ahead and say temp.withdraw. So this now calls the withdraw method of the bank account class. So AMT gets passed to it, which is 500. So it gets passed to here. So 500 is less than or equal to the balance. That is true because at this point, Bob has 2,000 and then the balance is deducted. And then this gets printed out. Money has been deposited to Bob's account. All right. So that was a more of a step-by-step tracing of what happened, just to hopefully make things a bit more clear. So hopefully that was the effect and not the opposite. Okay. So let's save this and then let's just run it again, compile and then run. Okay, let's run it. Right? So money has been deposited to Bob's account. Okay. All right. So this is our new and improved bank account. So now we can go ahead and have 10 customers. All right. So if you have any questions, you can just go ahead and maybe comment down below if you have questions and clarifications, or you can send us an email. Thanks for watching.